Hey, welcome to the Cheap Air Gunner channel. It's Cherokee Steve. I wanted to make a video concerning some things that might be obvious and well known to many of you out there, but to those new to air gunning, new to hunting with air guns, it may be some new information, but basically, I just took the Hotson Flashpup out in my backyard and did some 25-yard shooting with it. Now I want to take this out with me the next time I go squirrel hunting. So far I've been out 3 consecutive Saturdays. The first time I took the KTHPA. The second time I took my 2289 pumper. The third time I went out, I took the KTHPA with me again and filled it up, kept an eye on the gauge, and it held fine. That first Saturday, I did get a squirrel. The next 2 Saturdays, I got 1 shot each Saturday on a squirrel. Saw more than 1 squirrel, but out in the woods with wild squirrels, not the ones that are, your neighborhood squirrels that are used to seeing people. With the foliage that is still out there, number one, it's extremely hard to see them, even if you can hear them chattering. Once you do see them, getting a good shot, getting them to not move can be extremely difficult. But with that said, I did get a shot each of the Saturdays, but did not get a squirrel. But that brings me back to the Flashpup. A little bit more powerful. One of the things I realize I'm going to have to get used to with the amount of ground cover that is out where I hunt, it's virtually impossible to do any stalking and not make a considerable amount of noise. So stalking is very hard. What I've learned is I've got my spots now that I've been out there. I hear the barking, I hear the chattering, I know the spots where the squirrels tend to be, and I'm just going to sit and wait. And that's how I've done it the last 2 Saturdays. Although they've been unsuccessful, I am learning that that is a better technique than trying to stalk and try to walk over heavy, very heavy ground cover and not make noise. With that said, having and wanting to take the Flashpup out with me the next time, the only shooting I've done with it is down here in my basement at 10 meters. Today I did get out in the backyard and do some shooting with it at 25 yards. So first thing I wanted to mention, when you sight your scope in at a very short range, expect it to be completely different when you stretch it out. What I've noticed from 10 meters to 25 yards, my shots are extremely high, having it zeroed in at 10 meters. So you get that, rise on the trajectory at a farther distance. So I had to adjust my scope. It was pretty good, right to left. I made some minor adjustments. But as far as the elevation goes, it took a lot of adjustment to get it back on center at 25 yards. It was extremely hot out today. And having gone from my cool basement outside to the extremely hot environment, give your gun plenty of time to acclimate itself to that type of change. If you've got a long drive to where you're hunting and you've got your air conditioning going in your vehicle, let it acclimate to the warm temperature, if that is the temperature where you're hunting. The condensation that was on my scope lenses and just on the gun in general, especially the air cylinder, Personally, I was surprised at how much condensation there was and how long it took for the gun to acclimate itself to that hot weather outside. So keep that in mind. Some of the other things I've noticed, getting away from some going from indoor to outdoor shooting and some tips on doing that. The Flashpup itself. Is extremely backyard friendly. My neighbors are in extremely close proximity to where I live, and I had no issues. At least I didn't have anyone come out, poke their head out, or do anything. The smack of the pellet hitting the wooden backstop that I use was louder, approximately the same loudness as the firing of the gun itself. So this QE system on this particular rifle is just awesome. I did have to change the positioning of my scope. My eye relief that was working for me down here in the basement at 10 meters was not usable when I got it out and set myself up at 25 yards from my target. I had to move the scope well forward. I want to say probably 1.5 inches forward from the positioning I was using at 10 meters down here in my basement. So keep that in mind. If you're a basement target shooter and you decide, you know what, I'd like to get out and do some small game hunting with my air rifle, whatever sight you're using, scope you're using, what works for you down in your basement at a very close range may not be the best setup for once you get out and you're shooting at longer ranges. At least it wasn't for me. So keep that in mind. One thing, again, getting back to specifics of the Flashpup, I want to reiterate the positioning of the side lever and being as far back as it is something I'm going to have to get used to. I don't really like. I would prefer an action, whether it is side lever or bolt, closer to being over the trigger than as far back as this one is. I'm assuming, like I said, my Hatsan Hercules Bully, which is a bullpup in .45 caliber, has the side lever directly over the trigger. Now that's a very relative to the Flashpup, a much more expensive PCP bullpup. But I'm thinking as far as the complexity of the trigger linkage and everything that's involved in keeping costs down, it must just be much more easier to assemble and cost effective to have the side lever where it is on the Flashpup. That's what I'm assuming, as far as them keeping the price down on the Flashpup. It is a great priced entry-level PCP. Another thing in regards to the Flashpup, one of the adjustments I made was to the trigger pull. Now I'm not going to get into how to do it. I'm going to cover my own butt here and just say that there are very detailed, very explicit instructions that come with the user's manual that comes with the Flashpup on how to do that. The Quattro trigger is a 3-stage trigger. You can adjust the length of pull of the first stage. You can adjust the trigger pull of the second stage. You can adjust the resistance, I believe, of the first stage as well as the length. So those 3 things can all be adjusted, and like I said, it gets into good detail in the user's manual, so just follow that if you have a Flashpup and you're wanting to adjust your trigger. But my point was, I adjusted my trigger when it was set up in its stock configuration. The trigger pull of the second stage was just a little bit heavier than I would like. Unfortunately, I don't have a trigger pull gauge. That's something I definitely should pick up. But I adjusted it so it was lighter and to my liking. What I didn't take into account was then I adjusted the hammer spring preload and increased it for more power, and of course now the trigger pull is about at the spot that it was when the gun was stock. A little bit heavier than I'd like, but it is predictable and crisp. A very specific, defined first stage pull and length of pull. All in all, on all my Hudson guns, I do like the Quattro trigger system. So I did want to mention about if you adjust it in its stock configuration, the trigger pull, and then make a hammer spring adjustment for power, that's going to affect it. It has on my gun anyway, the trigger pull itself. So just wanted to mention that. But I'm not too crazy about where the side lever is, and it's going to take some getting used to, even more than I've already been shooting the gun. The other thing I don't think I will ever get used to are these magazines. I know this particular style is widely used on a wide variety of different PCP air guns. The Rotary magazines that Hatsan normally uses, very easy to load, very easy, and works very well at retaining the pellet inside the magazine. Even though it's a much more open magazine with a metal rotary and O-rings either on the outside or inside that keep pressure inward or outward on the side of the pellet or slug that you're using. It works very efficiently. I much prefer that style magazine that Hatsan uses, which I have for the Carnivore and for the Bully. It takes much longer to load this up. There are holes, obviously, for loading purposes on both sides of the magazine. And if you're not careful, while you're loading it or immediately after loading it, tilting it and tipping it forwards or backwards, I've had pellets drop out. Not crazy about that. You've got to be careful after it's fully loaded, and you need to rotate the back portion of the magazine back to its what I would call home position. Some of the pellets will move and kind of jam, and it takes some shaking and loosening of the pellet before the back portion of the magazine will continue to rotate to its home position. So I'm not a big fan of these magazines. So a little bit of criticism, again, for the price, for what I'm seeing power-wise from this gun, and what I just saw out in the backyard, accuracy. I got it dialed in pretty good. Shot a 3-shot group that could be covered with a dime. I'm very happy with that. And on target. So I'm sorry I don't have any video of me shooting outside. I was concerned, not knowing exactly what the sound level of this particular PCP would be out in the backyard, and wanting to be able to get back inside fairly quickly if that was needed. So I just want to throw all of this out there. A little bit more detailed review of some of the features of this gun and some things you might want to keep in mind if you're a basement target shooter and you decide you want to get out and do some hunting with your air guns. Hope there was some helpful information in this, and until the next one, guys, stay safe and shoot safe.